Good morning, family, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ellen Marie McPhillip, and I serve as the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Business Education here at Miami Herbert at the U. I will be your moderator for today's panel, Leadership Matters. And we are extremely blessed to have two enormously successful and respected servant leaders from our community, Alice Vilma and David Mullings. Alice earned her BBA, or Bachelor of Business Administration, in 1999, and she is currently Managing Director in the Multicultural Client Strategy Group at Morgan Stanley in New York City. She currently serves in that capacity and strengthens Morgan Stanley's connection to the multicultural business community through development and execution of commercial opportunities with corporate, government, institutional, and individual clients. She is also the co-head of Morgan Stanley's Multicultural Innovation Lab, an accelerator that invests and supports tech and tech-enabled startups with a multicultural or woman founder. Alice has been with Morgan Stanley for nearly 15 years, but she's had a career as an investment banker in equity and capital markets. She's had securitization of over $25 billion. She graduated cum laude here from the U, and she has her MBA from Harvard Business School. Welcome, Alice.
Thanks, Ellen. Nice to see you.
Joining us on our panel is David Mullings. David earned his Bachelor of Science and his Bachelor of Science in 2000 and his MBA from the University of Miami in 2003. He is the founder and chairman and CEO of Blue Capital Partners, a private investment firm focused providing retail investors access to a portfolio of public and private equity in the Caribbean. David is a director of Fund Black Founders, chairman of the Development Bank of Jamaica Mentorship Innovation Entrepreneurship Program, and he serves on the advisory board for the Caribbean School of Data, funded by Googles.org. And this particular institution is based at the University of the West Indies, the Mona School of Business Management in Jamaica. And finally, David serves as a member of the Board of Advisors in Kingston Creative. So with this enormous portfolio, we're very, very grateful that the two of you have decided to join us today. So let's get started. What's really quite extraordinary is David and Alice, both of you started at the U at a very young age, much younger than many traditional students. In fact, you graduated, both of you, before the age of 22. So you, Alice, with your BBA, and David with your MBA. So apart from your parents losing their mind and saying, oh my God, I'm sending my children to college, can you share a little bit about why you chose the University of Miami? And in particular, share a little bit about the special experiences and people you encountered here that helped shape your journey and your profession.
Alice?
So, Alice, would you start?
Happy to start. So I chose the University of Miami. I'm a Miami native. And so we had always been in and around the university. Even as little kids, I went to elementary school at West Laboratory University, which is right here on the University of Miami's campus. And so we had always felt we could work with the university because that school is actually an experimentation school and a teaching school for the School of Education. And so we had worked with University of Miami students. Some of them were interns in our class and etc. That was really my first taste to the university. And obviously you had the football team that was doing really, really well back then in the 80s. And so it was like, I really want to come here. Interestingly enough, you go to school, you go to college, you apply for college and you start thinking about other schools. And so I applied to other schools as well, Georgetown University, New York University, University of Penn, but chose Miami because, for one, it was a school that I had known pretty well. Number two, I always thought that I could get the same level of experiences that I would get at those other schools. And I knew that I was already a hard worker, and the finance program, which is the program that I was involved in, was strong. And so I was really excited and thought that I can manage my college experience the way that I want to be able to do what I want later. And so being in a school that I was more familiar with, the weather's not bad either, vis-a-vis those other institutions, was one that had me choose the and I would say that my decision was a great one. We can get into that later, but the people that I met, obviously the things that I learned, and clearly the opportunities that I was set up for moving forward proved out that thesis around coming to me.
Thank you, Alice. David, you want to share a little bit about your backstory?
No, sure. So born in Jamaica and growing up there between actually Jamaica and Miami. Mom was a nurse at Jackson Memorial, so we had an apartment in Miami and fly regularly. So I was familiar with the University of Miami to some extent. But then what happened was that my father actually applied to do a master's in public health. He's a medical doctor and taught at the University of West Indies in Jamaica for some 37 years. And I finished high school in Jamaica at 15 and came to the United States. And I decided to do 2 years at a community college first to get used to the US system. University of Miami was one school for us to look at. Dad did his MPH in 1996. So I was constantly on campus with him, really fell in love. And I wanted to pursue genetic research, actually. That was my target. And University of Miami had gotten, I think it was a $20 or $25 million donation to the College of Arts and Sciences for genetics. And so it made sense to apply. I applied to a number of schools, and UM offered me a scholarship in undergrad to finish. So why not take the scholarship? Came there, and my brother joined me a year later. Finished, went back to Jamaica to go and work and play soccer. I played in the second division in Jamaica and for an under 20 team. And I applied for an MBA. Dad said that it didn't make sense to go off to medical school or do something else. I should consider an MBA because he felt it was more important to understand business. And I had done economics classes undergrad. And once I applied, I did the GMAT and so on. And UM said, hey, you scored high enough, we'd give you a half tuition scholarship for the first year of your MBA. And I said, oh, well, I guess I won't be playing soccer professionally again. Let's go and take the MBA. I came here. And it so happened that in undergrad, I had 5 people from my class in Jamaica, from my high school class, were attending the U with me. And then in the MBA program, I really liked it because I knew I was going to do business between Latin America and the Caribbean. University of Miami was perfectly positioned for that as a kind of school, the alumni that will be going there, the people that were going to be in my MBA class. And one of them still works with me to this day. And there's a number of people that I met on campus who are still great friends. And they're either business leaders in their own organizations, founded their own companies across the region. And some stayed here in Miami. And some of them, 3 of them have invested in Blue Mohawk Capital. They helped me launch it. So University of Miami has been integral in my story.
Well, thank you for that. And that really gives me a nice segue into just talking about actually the careers you have had. Alice, you are a Black woman in financial services, and you've been incredibly successful over the last 15 years. Can you just share a little bit about what really influenced you and the ways in which your preparation at the University of Miami set you up for success in such a demanding career?
Well, I would say first, the educational aspect was one that was excellent to set me up for school. For work, working at Morgan Stanley. I had been able to secure an internship. Actually, at the time, Morgan Stanley was recruiting at the University of Miami. And so me not knowing much about investment banking, but thinking it might have been an interesting opportunity and certainly would love to live in New York for a summer, said, this is cool. And so I go to Morgan Stanley and realize that, yes, you're running around with folks who went to Ivy League schools, but you know exactly, as much as they do. And so that was one, confidence booster. Definitely was like, okay, I can certainly do the work here. That's not an issue at all. And then it was about getting to know the networks, etc. So first, I would say University of Miami definitely set the foundation. A lot of the things that we were learning in finance were really on the front foot and on the cutting edge of what we were doing at Stanley, which then sets you up to
We're cutting in and out of just a little bit, Alice. So I just want to make sure that our guests really hear you.
Okay.
So if you would be kind enough just to repeat that last bit.
Okay, sure. I was saying that it set me up for a good foundational base in order to begin to excel at Morgan Stanley, which then set me up to do great at Morgan Stanley. At the beginning of my career, your work is your calling card, and good work begets more work, and so that's what you're doing. And so I was able to build a very strong base with respect to product knowledge, industry knowledge at the firm. And so I think that in and of itself is what then led to more opportunities to meet different clients and to meet different to do different deals at the firm, to try out different experiences and to work in different parts of the firm, which has been really and hugely beneficial. And I would also say it led to the desire to expand my network through graduate school and also different working opportunities to then come back to the firm 7 years later and be able to come in and deliver and add to my portfolio the experiences that I had outside the firm that I then used back in the firm. And so those experiences have been critical and integral to my experience at Morgan Stanley. Those experiences have also helped to augment my portfolio, if you will, with respect to my career, and certainly has helped to get me to the position that I am today.
Thank you. David, can you just answer pretty much the same question? Finance is not an easy business to make your way. And you had to really sort of push out some elbows so that you could succeed. So share a little bit about, what have been some of the major influences that helped you to succeed in that?
Well, one of the most important things was actually going to University of Miami, and in the MBA program, our first semester, we had a class where the professor went through what he considers the three kinds of businesses you could actually invest in or start, and that helped to change my perception of what is a high quality business. So whether it's perishable goods, durable goods, or intellectual property, those were his three preferences of putting it together. And then we had to present a business plan for a class. We had to just pitch something. My brother and I worked on it, and we made a presentation in the class. And this is after 4 years of my parents actually asking us every summer and Christmas to present a business to them that they could invest $10,000 in, and they always said no. And we only had one hand go up in the class. I remember it was a black guy named Wesley, and he just asked, "Can I invest $10,000?" And the teacher said, "Wow, I think you're onto something." So UM finally allowed me to pitch a business that somebody wanted to invest in, the first one ever. And mom and dad said, "No, you just met them. You don't know if it's smart money. We will invest the $10,000 instead." I'm like, "Oh, didn't know you actually had $10,000 to risk." So it was interesting. And then as we got to launch a business, everything I learned in MBA, we got to apply directly. MBAs don't teach you to start a business, they teach you to manage, but it allowed us to do things a bit different than the typical startup. So that was a lot of fun, and that was Random Media, which created Real Vibes, our first platform, and that was fun. But more importantly, it established some really good relationships. It gave us case studies. It made us understand how important it was to study the mistakes and the successes of other people, to understand how important leadership development was going to be, and management, because a lot of startup founders don't have management experience, and so they're good at the startup phase, but they're not good at the growth phase. They can't actually become the CEO of the company. Most founders don't remain CEO after probably 20 or even 50 employees. They're not ready. They probably don't have any sort of MBA type skills. So the program has allowed me to stay there and point out why we need to have, for example, a psychologically safe work environment, or why teams matter and how teamwork should work. And game theory, I loved game theory, but I would say the single most important thing I learned in the MBA program was the time value of money. I don't think we talk about that as minorities. We don't discuss money typically. We don't value time, and we don't value money. So those were eye-opening. And for me, when Alice talks about the network, the alumni network for me through University of Miami, not just the Black alumni, not just the Caribbean alumni, the general alumni have been so supportive, either wanting to support in some way. Our general counsel is a University of Miami law school graduate who I met at an alumni event in Orlando, and he's still our GC today, and this is 7 years later after working with us on a previous business. So that's really important to me.
So, Alice, can you talk a little bit about the mentoring and sponsoring relationships that have really helped support you on your journey?
Sure. I think that I probably am not here without mentors and sponsors. Um, and you need both. And we've talked about that. And I think that the sponsor uh, persona is one that's continuing to make its way into normal lexicon, which is good because the sponsor is the person who is carrying your bucket of water or singing from your hymn book when you're not in the room. And that's really, really important. So I would say that my first sponsor was probably the head of my group when I first started. That person got me my next job that was outside of the firm and set me up for a great, successful stint at the next place where I was working. And that sponsor also wrote an application for my business school. And we're still in touch today. So sponsors have been super helpful. My sponsor, when I got promoted to managing director, it was funny. I think that person wanted my promotion more than I did, quite frankly. And so that's good. That's a good thing. And so I would say, and mentors have been helpful because they've been helpful for me at all of the inflection points, if you will, in my career, helping me to think about who I am as a person, what I really think that I want, what I'd like to do, and then how to actually get there given current scenario. So how do you switch from being in a financial services institution to actually working at the client? How do you think about business school? How do you think about what happens after business school? What you want to do? How do you set yourself up for a career change? How do you set yourself up for a second change? So mentors have been invaluable, and I have a lot of them. It's not just one. And I think that everyone should have, if you would, a board of directors, a personal board of directors, different people with different experiences and different value that they can bring to you in order to keep it real with you and give you kind of good, bad, and ugly about how you're thinking about things, who you are as a person, what you want to achieve, how realistic that is in your current situation, and what you need to do to get there, as well as your cheerleaders and sponsors who are willing to tell the whole world how great you are, and so that you can again get achieve your career goals and get the objectives and get to the points at which you'd like to in your career. So they've been invaluable. I also think, I will just mention this, that we continue our careers, we need to be able to repay those debts, and that's for the younger generations coming up as well. So I would say that as much as I have been mentored, I have done mentoring, and I've also done sponsoring. So it's imperative, particularly for us women, folks of color, who may not have that voice in other places, to be that voice for other people.
No, absolutely. Alice Vilma Inc. or David Mullings Inc. is a real thing. And in a shorthand, we want our young people and certainly our community to know that this is not something that you can sort of make up as you go along. It's intentional. So David, share a little bit about your sponsors and mentorship relationships and how they've helped make you the person, not just the leader, but the person you are today.
No, I appreciate that. So I actually tend to dislike the word mentors. Having played, professional sports, I felt that people actually want coaches, and I like the idea of apprenticeship. So if I want to become a master tailor, I need to apprentice with a tailor. I need to find preferably one person to learn from. So you get a wide range of people. You try to figure out, where do I want to go? What's my why, right? I say you need to get clarity of purpose. Once you have clarity of purpose, now I look for a role model. I get the recipe, and then I don't change the recipe. I'm only allowed to change that recipe if I've exceeded that role model. So I started out with Warren Buffett as a role model, and then I found a Jamaican, who is Michael Lee Chin, Jamaican-Canadian billionaire. He's on the cover behind me there with myself. And I became his apprentice. I studied him before I actually knew him. Eventually, we got to meet in person a number of years ago. And I got to be an apprentice, an understudy. Same thing when I worked at a hedge fund, I worked at a lower middle market private equity fund. I was an apprentice. But I had to know what I wanted to do. I don't want to be the next Michael Lee Chin or the next Warren Buffett. I am me. I want to learn from their mistakes. I want to learn from their successes. I want to understand how they make decisions. And that was important. It's not what the decision was, it's how they arrived at decision. And that framework that mattered more. So they've been integral though. And especially with Mike, I was seeking to raise a small amount of money, 5 million, and we talked. He helped me with the legal structure. He gave me CFO at no cost to help us go through the financial projections. I mean, that's to me, that's insane. This guy is running, he worked $3.5 billion or some crazy number. And he said, Mr. Mullings. I'm like, no. So that was interesting. But then when we came back and said, okay, legal structure in place, investment strategy is solid, you need to raise way more though. I was like, no, but the most I've raised in my entire life is $1.5 million total. And he's like, no, you're going to raise 100 million, put my name in there and let me come on board and help you as an official advisor to the business, and let's go for broke. Like, and I'd ask him, why would you put so much effort into me? And he says, well, we're 30 years apart, January 1951, January 1981, but he's like, there's something about you putting in the work, right? He said, I'm intentional. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It was not about the money. It was about being a positive role model for other people. And he said, well, you can do it. You keep not believing you're worthy of more. And so he forced me to think bigger. And that's what the best sponsors do. That's what the best mentors, the best coaches, they force you to think bigger and realize that you are worthy of those big dreams. These other people doing amazing stuff aren't actually smarter than any of us. They just believed it, or somebody pushed them to believe it.
So I think that is really wonderful, because my next question is, now that you know so much, what would you tell your younger self, that young voice that was like literally all energy, all ideas, but no clue? Alice, I'm starting with you again.
I think a lot of the things I would tell my younger self have to do with slowing down a little bit. So obviously you have a lot of ideas. You're very, very hungry. You have this whole plan. You have a whole plan, this and this in 5 years and 2 years and then 3 years and then 10 years and 15 years. And if someone asks you what you want to do in 27 and a half years, you know exactly what you want to do on that day and with whom and however, right? But life throws you lots of little curveballs. Life throws you curveballs in terms of your health. You may get sick. You may lose a parent. You may get married. There are just a lot of life, but you may move, etc. You may have a natural disaster in your area. Whatever the case is, that's life, right? And so how are you resilient? And I would say, instead of this detailed plan, like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, right? It's almost a true norm. And so back to David's point about intentionality, you kind of know where you're going, where you want to be, how you're going to get there, but taking in the data and also taking in the curveballs that you get to make sure you're kind of still on that point. The other thing that I would say to my younger self, which thank goodness I'm actually following this, and it came from some thoughts from Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook, which is, your career is not necessarily, well, for some it's a very linear line that's up and to the left. A lot of times it's like a jungle gym, where you go from one level to another level. You may jump down to then really catapult yourself ahead. And so to think about all opportunities as ways to, again, get to true north, which may take a detour to the left and the right a little bit, but can actually put you further ahead than if you just stayed on the same path. And it goes back to David's point again about thinking big, thinking outside the box, and then thinking how to get there. Being somewhat realistic, but again, pushing yourself to really get off sometimes the schedule, and because that schedule is only limited by your experiences, right? And begin to influence that plan and schedule with your sponsors, mentors, even coaches, because you're going to get to actually a better place. So that's what I would tell myself.
And David, your younger self started at 15, so let's just be careful here, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Alice, I love that she's so intentional talking about writing these things down. So I wrote a 15-year plan at age 15, broke into blocks of 5 years, including when I'd get married. And then the deal would be at age 30, my wife would then work on a 20-year plan with me, broke into blocks of 5 years. Not as rigid, but with a very specific goal. So I'm very intentional and I'm sticking to it. So I would tell my younger self, don't worry. Follow the plan. Like, you're not crazy. It's different from everybody else, but your plan will work. Any frustration that you have will pass. This too shall pass. But I like what Alice said, slow down. I thought that I needed to burn the candle at both ends because I'm young. And then 2 years ago, I mean, this is now exactly 2 years, February 3rd, I was rushed to hospital and I had to do life-saving surgery. This was it shut me down for 6 weeks. I had 18 months of rehab. So I'm finally good, 100% free and clear. But it was shocking, and just, kneeling down to pray before going into surgery, all I could think about was a family. We had 3 little kids, and the oldest one would say, "Oh, Daddy carried me to this." We got to meet Mark Hamill. He's named Luke, so he got to meet Mark Hamill, named Luke after Luke Skywalker. We got him to meet President Obama. I took my wife to the White House. Oh, that is awesome, right? And then the middle son is like, "Oh, Daddy's a mean daddy. He didn't spend as much time with me." Right? I was like, "Oh, geez." And then the last one is a girl, and she's only a year old, and she wouldn't know her dad. She would only see these interviews, these articles. Wow, I should have been more at home. Because supposedly I'm doing it for the family. Oh, I'll do it all now because later on I can enjoy all the money and all the time with the family. But if you're not alive, it will make a difference. So that was something that was important. And then the other thing I'd tell my younger self is that you don't have to be a politician where you're trying to get everybody to like you. You just need to find your tribe and focus on them. Stop trying to run for office, basically. I don't need everybody to like me. Just that's what it is. You don't need to argue with everybody. You don't need to convince everybody. Convince a few people and then go deep.
Wow, that is such great advice. And that's something that we only learn as we're getting closer to 100. But Alice, I want to drill down really just a little bit more. Again, Black women have the double whammy. We got the gender thing and we got the ethnic thing. Just a little bit more, if you can say the one thing I know you're confident and competent. Those two things we know for sure. But what's that one little bit of secret sauce that you can share with a younger woman coming up and wanting to be in your business?
So I would say, again, the competence and confidence comes because the one thing that I know for sure in this industry, I did not get to where I am because someone wanted to be nice to me. I earned it. And you don't get promoted. No one gives away promotions. No one gives away pay. And so I earned it. Imposter syndrome is real, particularly for people of color, particularly for women, because there are a lot of microaggressions that get thrown around in the office place. And so little things that'll chip at your confidence, such as, "Oh, you're so articulate," or, "Oh, I didn't know that you would come up with that. Oh, that was your idea. Wow." Those types of things. And you just let that roll off. Because at the end of the day, you know what you're here for, and you know what you can put on the table. And if you could not bring that to work with you every day, or if you could not bring those ideas to bear, you wouldn't be there. And so I know that every single day, and that is just what it is. Back to the point that David just said about not everybody has to like you. Make sure, and that's certainly true, I would say, in my industry, but make sure that the people who need to understand who you are and need to like you, that they're on board, they understand how you work, they understand where you're going and what value you bring, and the rest are just it's just collateral damage. I would say it'd be nice if everybody liked you, but they're quite frankly malicious people in any organization, and so try to stay away from them as much as possible, and then you can move forward. But that's what I know. I know that that's a fact.
All right, I want to pivot now to both of you, to something that both of you care deeply about, and that is this enormous commitment to paying it forward. In lots of different places and spaces, you do this. So before we identify the specifics, Alice, I'm going to come back to you and say, why is it so important for you to pay it forward?
I could go on and on about this, but one of the main reasons why it's important is because if you think about our communities as collectives, and so I love the work that I do, but we become a stronger force en masse. So it's always nice to be the one, the token, that's nice. It certainly will open up trails and blaze new trails for others, but we have to make sure that we're looking back and bringing people along with us. And that's really how change happens, and that's how enduring change happens. And if you see what's been going on, particularly this time around with the events that have happened last summer, this is where everyone's keeping their foot on the gas, joining arms, and people are quite frankly in positions to be able to do that. And that's how enduring change happens. And no disrespect to the trailblazers, none at all. We needed trailblazers in order to open those doors but now we're keeping the door open because there's so many of us coming through, can't actually close it, right? And so that's really how I think about the impact that we're making. The more that, particularly in my job, we're investing in underrepresented founders, and the more that we continue to bring those stories to bear and to show value and the money that's being left on the table by not being inclusive around innovation and investing, the more that people come on. And so you really actually do have an ability to change current situations by just being able to concentrate on certain parts of the demographics, concentrate on the demographics that look like you and bringing them into the forefront, both from an economic standpoint as well as a service standpoint. You also just never know from outside of business, right? You also never know how much of an impact you actually make on others. And so the ability to be able to make that impact every day, and for someone to change their career path because they heard you speak, or be the spark that tells someone, you know what, I actually think that I can go into Wall Street because I'm a good student and this is interesting to me. And here's someone who made it, and here's someone who will be supportive to me. Those are big things too. All of it is around affecting enduring change. And that is why, those are some of the reasons why I find it important to do that.
David, to you, same question.
Yeah, to pick up on what Alice said about strength in numbers, I think is very important for us to realize that, right? We need teamwork to make the dream work. For me, the reason I especially want to pay it forward is because I grew up, fortunately, in a country where we were majority black. I saw bankers and doctors and lawyers that looked like me. That was normal. And Jamaica is a classist society, not a racist society. It's very, very different. So to me, that was normal. And then having to go to school in the United States was just like, wow, this is so different. The Black American experience is not what I have. And so I need to pay it forward in two different countries. Right? I don't want anybody to have to leave Jamaica to achieve their dreams like what I had to leave. Blue Mohawk Capital couldn't start there. I had to come here to do certain things. But at the same time, I don't want someone growing up as a Black American not benefiting from what I benefited as Jamaican. And I think is a legacy of Jamaicans that come to the United States or Canada or UK who contribute, whether this is Marcus Garvey that comes here in the 1930s and helped to get this Black liberation movement going, or it's Bob Marley doing music around the world that gets us to free ourselves from mental slavery. I mean, we have so many. Harry Belafonte is a Jamaican who helped to literally launch what we have been benefiting from with the civil rights movement. So I feel like I owe it to my forefathers, I owe it to my parents. I mean, this is how my parents raised me, and I just don't want any other Black boys and girls to grow up in the United States thinking that, oh wow, we had one Black president, or we have a vice president, finally female, who a Jamaican father, Indian mother, who went to a HBCU. That should be normal. We need to get that. That means we need to have as many of us as possible, as Alice said, running through the door. I think that's right.
So can you share a little bit, and this is back to David, about one particular project, whether it's here in the US or in Jamaica, that is literally helping you fuel this idea around community?
Well, so if you're going to go with projects, I definitely would want to say that Fund Black Founders is something that is close to my heart. It was a friend of mine out of New York that called me. His name is also David. He said, hey, a friend of mine used to work for me. He's launching this platform for now. It's a rewards-based funding platform for Black businesses, but she needs your help. I've done other kinds of business. I'm not a tech entrepreneur guy. This is your world. You need to help her, and you can't say no. And so we spent almost all of last year working closely with her. We do intend to write a check and help Renee scale this business and eventually go into equity crowdfunding as well, leveraging the Jobs Act. And so for me, that's something that can start in the US and scale into Canada, the UK, the Caribbean, into Africa. But we need our own platforms to support people who look like us, sound like us, and know how to solve our own problems.
Alice, as you think about a project that is really near and dear to your heart, outside of the University of Miami, because we're coming back to that, what would you like to sort of share with the community?
Well, I definitely think the work that I'm doing at Morgan Stanley every day around investing in founders, helping them make the connections and extend their networks as much as possible, as well as find other investors to advance their businesses, is something that I'm near and dear to. And it's a project that I am happy to be able to co-lead at Morgan Stanley, and in a way that's driving a lot of impact at a firm like that using that platform. So that's really near and dear to my heart, and I'm glad that I get to do that every day for a living.
And so as you think back on in terms of the marriage between your professional lives, your philanthropy, your community building, what is the thread that you think runs through why you do the work you do? I mean, you've spoken a little bit about sort of paying it forward and sort of building community, but if you can drill down a little bit more about, you could be doing 1,000 different things with your intellect, with your energy. What is the driving nut so that as the community begins to think about their why, they can either say, oh, yeah, Alice talked a lot about this, or David talked a little bit about that. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, I can start. I can definitely start. I think that over time with my career, you pick up skills, right? So you pick up skills and then you're really good at that. And then you start to determine what you're really good at. And so like, I'm really good at doing this finance thing. I'm really good at these numbers. And then you start to think about what you actually really like. And so there are lots of interests that I have. The arts is one of them as an example. I'm definitely interested in self-care. And then you say to yourself, okay, now how do I match what I'm really good at with something that I like a lot? And so when you think about an opportunity, I would definitely say at Morgan Stanley, this is one of the once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that I was presented with around, hey, we're doing this new initiative. How do you think about this? And would you like to join? And that turned into, and I said, oh, again, matching what I am passionate about, my communities, with what I do really, really well. And now 6 years later, you got a whole group and KPIs and numbers and metrics, and people are like, this is amazing. Like now people are asking about it. We're in the press a lot more. And that's because I feel like when you're able to mesh something that you do very, very well with something that you're passionate about, it's not work, and you're successful.
Right. Isn't that the great moment in time when you figure that out? David, what about you?
I love that. No, I'm like Alice. I don't feel like I've worked a day since probably I was 15. And so in my case, it really started with knowing what I wanted to do, right? At 15, that 15-year plan, I knew that I had 4 options. I won't go through the 4, but the final one we landed on was that I had to become an entrepreneur that could do my own film and music, that could influence how people saw themselves, what they would talk about, what they would think about. So Richard Branson was one of those people I looked up to. But nobody's going to give me money for film and music. That's really risky. So I had to make my own money so that I could take the risk to learn to be an entrepreneur.
There's money out there.
Well, now there's money out there, and there are tax credits out there too, right? And,
so gotta get some people, right?
let's get some introductions. So at 15, that's how I started. So I knew I wanted to be a positive role model for young people around the world, especially young Black men in Jamaica. I felt like we had too many role models that were sports and music, and we needed some role models outside of those areas. And in my opinion, they existed in Jamaica, less so in the US. I could become one of those and become an outsized voice. And for me, the reason that I do it ultimately is that I simply want to put positivity in other people's lives. And every time I do that, it brings me joy. Like the messages that I get from people that say, oh, you spoke at this event, or I heard you here, or I saw a video, or you just post stuff on Instagram and it inspires me. I love it. Makes me, I'm smiling right now, getting goosebumps. That's all I want to do. I just want to make people smile. And that's why I do it.
Wow. So one last question. So if you could recommend one book, one Instagram post, one basically hack for someone who is trying to gather up the courage to take that step into entrepreneurship. They think they got an idea. They've even taken the madness and written a business plan, which is probably 5 years old. But they need that one tool that is going to sort of take them to that next level. Can you share what that might be, Alice?
So I'm going to share a book that we actually also give to our entrepreneurs. And I think it's helpful for all entrepreneurs to understand how the entrepreneurial game works, particularly from a venture standpoint, because eventually you're going to need capital, and you're going to need capital from people you don't know. And i.e. not your friends and family. And you may even need capital earlier than your friends and family. And so it's called Venture Deals. It was written by Brad Feld, and it talks about everything an entrepreneur needs to know about doing deals and how to shape your company in order to get that investment, and how to break down some of the lingo. That's actually a very scary part for a lot of entrepreneurs around how do I raise money? I don't like talking to investors. This whole game is whatever. And quite frankly, the VC community, there is a bias systemically towards founders of color and women. And so it helps you get very smart on these things, because as long as you have the foundational basis, this shouldn't scare you as much. Now, it may still be a pain, but it won't scare you as much. You'll know what you're talking about. And so that would be one of the things I think that would help you get really smart and say, you know what, I understand the basics of this stuff. I got it. I know what to expect from lawyers. I know what to expect from VCs. I know how VCs get paid, so I kind of get this game. And I know how to think about my business in a way that will attract capital. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay, and I'm going to repeat that for the audience. Venture Deals, correct?
Venture Deals by Brad Feld.
By Brad Feld.
F-E-L-D.
Okay.
Yep. He used
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
And David, how about you?
So I know that book. So I recommend, I'm going to have two books, but they're for two different audiences. Because I don't think most people should actually start a business or run a business. I don't think most people are cut out to be entrepreneurs. The mental toughness that's required, most people can't manage. So for those who aren't sure if they want to be entrepreneurs, but still decide in their life, I would recommend How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton M. Christensen. And I think you first need to figure out what you want to do with your life. Most people do not have clarity or purpose. If you're going to go into business though, like I decided, entrepreneurship was for me. I know how I measure in my life. I actually recommend, it recently came out, What It Takes by Stephen Schwartzman, who is the genius behind Blackstone. I think I'm more of a private equity guy than a venture capital guy. That's just my world. And so I think you learn a lot from him, both on the personal side, but also how to do deals. Like, what does this world look like? You get some of the terms. You don't get all the venture terms, but most businesses will never raise venture capital, period. Where you could raise growth capital. You could just become a profitable business, and private equity can teach you how to do that.
Okay. Well, wow. I learned a lot, and I know both of you. So listen, thank you so much, Alice and David, for your generosity of spirit, intellect, and most of all, your time, because this is the precious gig. We want to thank you for supporting, certainly, the Black Alumni Society, this particular event called Our Story. But mostly, we want to thank you for just being one of us. You know, Canes helping Canes. It's not, you're really making it for real, not just sort of an on-campus thing, but a much larger community thing. And that really is the secret sauce of being one of us. Obviously, we know that you guys have more big things to actually go and do. So we're in the cheering seat behind you. And I'm hoping that many people who are in the audience today now believe that opportunity and purpose and execution and excellence are all married, but they don't happen by accident. And that you, David and Alice, could be, if not mentor and sponsor, certainly cheerleader in their efforts. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your spirit. Thank you for your joy.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, it's 11:45, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of today's activities. This is a wide-ranging conversation, and we think that hopefully you will take away not just activities for today, but for a lifetime of learning with and through the University of Miami. Thank you so much for your energy. Good night.